Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, or whatever day you end up watching this video. I'm going to just do a quick little video, some education on how to easily hit your macros because I know some of you are struggling with this, and that was the question I asked is what topic you want me to cover today. I had two of you that responded by the time I recorded this, so that's what we're going with. But we're going to talk about that. It's how to consistently hit your macros, some easy tips to help, some things to try out, some things you maybe have never heard of or considered that might work for you. Remember, everybody has a different approach. What works for me may not always work for you, and vice versa. However, at the end of the day, you do have to find what works best for you, whatever it is that you can consistently stick with and consistently do for the long-term approach, okay? So just keep that in mind as I share these, that some of these may not work well for you, and that is okay. Like I said, you have to be able to figure out what works best for you. This is just some tips I'm sharing that might be a good fit for you, okay? So first thing I want to talk about is something called macro Tetris, okay? If you've ever played the game Tetris, you know how that works, right? You have to turn the little shapes so that they all fit into the right place. You have to get them all lined up and keep going so that you knock off the blocks at the end of the whatever you want to call it, the screen, the end of the game. Okay, so Tetris means making it all fit, right? With tracking your macros, with eating the right foods to hit those macros, it is basically the same idea. It's you are playing Tetris to figure out how to make all of the different foods fit in order to hit your macros. Now, I know this can be very overwhelming for some people. Some do not do well with this game because it stresses them out. It's too much thinking. They don't want to do it. Sometimes it's not even that it's too much. Some people just don't want to make the extra effort in order to think about it, okay? And sometimes that's okay. There's other ways to do this. However, you also have to be willing to do a little bit extra and work at it if you do want to make changes in order to get better. So, macro Tetris, like I said, making all the pieces fit, figuring out how to make your foods fit in order to hit your macros. But let's talk through some different ways of doing this, okay? So number 1, this is my favorite tip that I like to share and one that I highly recommend to most of you, especially in the beginning. Not always, but a lot of times I do talk about doing this in the beginning, and that is tracking your food before you eat. So that means at the beginning of the day or even the night before when you're just laying in bed playing on your phone, going into MyFitnessPal and planning out your next day's meals. So this works well whether you eat the same foods, throughout the day, or even if you're doing something different. It's going in and planning out what you're going to eat, what's next you're going to have, what breakfast, lunch, dinner, all of that. Planning it out as much as you possibly can, because I know it's not ideal for everybody to plan out every single meal, but if you can do it, or do it as much as you can. Plan it out for the entire day, track it, pre-log it into the app. That way you can kind of see where your numbers are at and know what it is you might need to adjust. Let's say, for example, you don't know what you're going to have for dinner, but you know what you're going to have for breakfast, snacks, and lunch. You can go ahead and pre-log all of those. Then come dinner time, you can kind of play around with whatever numbers you have left in order to hit your macros, okay? The best part about this is when you are pre-planning, when you are pre-logging, you have already guaranteed that you're going to hit your macros before the day even gets going, as long as you are committed to sticking to your plan. Now, I have done this numerous times over the years, and sometimes it works really great, and sometimes my plan changes, and I don't actually eat what I've logged. So there is that caveat to it that just because you log it doesn't necessarily mean you eat it. You do have to be willing to stick to that plan, or go in and adjust your numbers if something changes, okay? That is the other part of it too. But going back to what I was saying is pre-logging your food as much as you can for the day, even if it's not everything, and then you have a little bit of room to work with as the day goes on to be able to add some things in, adjust it, look at your numbers, and kind of see where you are. So that's the first tip I want to share. Second tip is to split up your foods, your macros evenly among all of your meals and snacks for the day. Now, what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, you're somebody who eats 6 meals / snacks a day, okay? And let's say your protein goal is 150 grams, your carbs are 180 grams, and your fats are 60 grams. If you were going to split these up evenly amongst each meal, you would have 25 grams of protein for one meal, 30 grams of carbs for that same meal. 25 grams of protein, 30 grams of carbs, 10 grams of fats, if I did my math right. You'd have 25, 30, and 10 grams of protein, carbs, and fats with each of your 6 meals for the day. That means you have an even split amount of foods for each meal. This does not mean you're eating 6 meals a day that are exactly the same. It just means you're making sure that each meal that you eat has 25 protein, 30 carbs, 10 fats. So maybe you come up with, several meals that consist of all of those amounts of macros that have the 25 protein, 30 carb, 10 fat. You come up with different combinations of meals so that when you go to eat meals and snacks each day, you can just grab from like your database of what meals actually match those numbers. And doing this, splitting it evenly among your meals and snacks for the day, guarantees you're going to hit those numbers because you have consistency with each meal throughout the day. You can also do this whether you're going to eat 3 meals or 4 meals. Obviously, your macro allowance is going to be a bit bigger, the less amount of meals and snacks you have a day, but you can play around with it. You can do 3 meals, 4, 5, 6, whatever you prefer. But splitting them up evenly is a great way to guarantee you're going to hit your macros consistently on a day-to-day basis, okay? Third option kind of falls in line with the first two, but in a little different way. And this is to eat the same or similar foods all week and weekend long, okay? There is a lot of proof behind consistency in your intake and your body responding to eating a lot of the same foods on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis. Eating the same foods makes it much easier each week. You don't have to think about it. It takes out that thought process. You can add all kinds of seasonings and low-calorie dressings, sauces in order to, spice it up, make it a little bit different if you don't like to eat the same thing. The G Hughes sauces are my absolute favorite. They're like super low calorie, like, 2 grams of carbs, but they have like barbecue, and they have sweet and spicy, and they have mustard, and they have ketchup, and they have like Polynesian sauce, and I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are like amazing to just change up the flavor of whatever. If I'm just having plain old chicken, rice, and vegetables, which I tend to have a lot each week, I will add some different sauces to it to just change it up. You guys, if you don't know this already about me, I'm a very boring person when it comes to eating. I am not huge into flavor and additives and having to have creativity. Like, I am fine with just eating the same foods on a daily, weekly basis. I've been having oatmeal with blueberries and peanut butter every day, almost every day for probably maybe a year. I don't even know anymore. And I'm still not tired of it. Like, I don't mind it. I like to eat the same foods. I like to eat just plain boring foods. And that's what works for me. I know, again, that does not work for everybody. Like I said, keep that in mind that what works for me does not always work for you. However, consistency in foods works really well for me. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to plan a lot. I just want to eat it, get on my way, make sure I'm fueling my body, make sure I'm fueling my workouts, hitting my macros, and on I go with life. Weekends tend to be a little bit more relaxed. I'll add some different things in, but Monday through Friday, I tend to just keep things simple and keep them straight across the week. So that's another option you can try, is just eating the same or very similar foods all week long. And then the fourth thing I want to talk about is focusing on hitting your protein first, making sure that you absolutely hit that protein number with consistency each day, followed by hitting your calories, okay? When you do this, hitting protein and hitting calories, you can let your carbs and fats kind of fall wherever in between. So what I mean by that is, let's say as long as you're hitting your protein, okay, your carbs, you can have a higher carb day one day, keeping your fats lower, or vice versa, you can have a higher fat day with some lower carbs on a different day, okay? Carbs and fats, carbohydrates and fats are both fuel sources. That is what our body uses for fuel to get through the day, to survive work, to keep up with our kids, to push ourselves through workouts. Carbs are going to be better for workout fuel, but fats can also help with that. But those are fuel sources, so they're not as big of a deal as long as you're not eating too many of both. That is when weight gain and fat gain start to happen, okay? Most important is to hit your protein goal. That is going to be your absolute best friend when it comes to fat loss, weight loss, boosting your metabolism, really getting the results that you want is making sure you're eating enough protein. And then as long as you're not going over your total calories, you're going to stay in what we call that calorie deficit, where you are burning or you're eating less than what you're burning, okay? So that's what we want when it comes to weight loss and fat loss, is hitting protein and staying at or slightly under the calories that are set for you. Carbs and fats can kind of fall wherever, and that keeps it a little bit more simpler to you to just focus on hitting protein and focus on hitting calories. This works really well for anybody who likes to have flexibility in their day-to-day plan, okay? If you don't like to plan ahead too much, if you don't like to eat the same foods a lot, as long as you're really making sure that you hit that protein on a daily basis by getting in enough whole food, lean protein sources, and supplementing with protein shakes if you need to. As long as you're doing that and then hitting your calories with other food, that is a great option for that flexibility piece of it, okay? Now, I will say with that some people do tend to respond better to lower carb, higher fats. Some people also respond better to higher carb, lower fats. Some people also respond to moderate of both. So just as a clarification on that, some people's bodies do respond better to one versus the other. However, that's why you get the honor of working with me, because I can help you figure that out if as we're working together and seeing what changes happen with you. If we get to the point where I say, hey, we really got to stick to these numbers, you've got to stick to low calorie, or low carb, or you've got to stick to high carb. That's where my job, where I tell you like, hey, we got to stick to these numbers and be a little bit more strict with doing that. But otherwise, if I've never told you that, then you are fine to just focus on hitting your protein, hitting your calories, letting carbs and fats fall wherever. And then the last thing I want to say is, remember, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate this process. It is very easy to get caught up in overthinking and stressing and analyzing numbers and trying to figure out what to eat. Planning ahead helps a ton with that. Pre-logging, pre-tracking your food helps a ton with that, especially I'm doing that the first thing in the day before the day gets busy. Then you don't forget about what foods you've eaten. They're already there. Your plan is there. It's a lot easier to stick to the plan when you've already logged it and have made that extra effort to plan out your day. Like I already said, you can keep your macros even for all of your meals and snacks. Make it simpler that way. You can eat same or similar foods all week. And lastly, you can focus on hitting protein and calories to really simplify the process and give you some more flexibility. Above all, the other thing I want to say is remember that whole food, nutrient-dense foods are going to be the best option for your body and seeing the best changes. It's not just about hitting your macros, it's also what foods you are choosing to eat to hit those macros. If you are relying on protein shakes, whether it's powder, whether it's ready to drink protein shakes like Premier Protein or Fairlife, those are okay to have, yes, a little bit, but if you're getting most of your protein from that is not a great option for you because you're not getting as many nutrients from it as you would from something like chicken breast, okay? Same thing with like carbohydrates. If you're getting most of your carbohydrates from something like cereal or chips or rice cakes, like those are not going to have as much nutrient value as it would be to have rice, oatmeal, potatoes. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about food choices, that it's not just about hitting your macros, it's also about what foods you're eating in order to hit those macros and getting the most that you can out of what foods you choose to eat. So I hope this helps provide some clarification. This video went a little longer than I intended, which usually happens to me once I get going, but I do hope it was helpful for you all. If you have further questions or other topics you want me to cover, shoot me a message or shoot it here in the group app or in the group chat. And I would love to do another video on whatever it is you guys need.